The morning sun rose quietly over Crestwood Estates, a neighborhood where the lawns were trimmed to perfection and the residents prided themselves on maintaining an image of calm order. But beneath that pristine surface simmered constant tension, most of it centered around one woman, Karen Whitfield, the self-proclaimed guardian of the HOA. To her, every out-of-place trash bin, unapproved paint color, or extra vehicle in a driveway was a personal attack on the neighborhood's reputation. And today, something new had caught her eye. For the past week, construction crews had been working at the end of her street, installing what looked like new cables in an underground junction box. The bright orange markings and warning flags only irritated her more. She didn't know what fiber optic, do not touch meant, but to her, it looked like an eyesore. When she called the HOA board, they told her it was approved city maintenance, but Karen wasn't convinced. She decided the contractors were trespassing and that the cable installation was not aesthetically compliant. So, when she noticed the crew gone for the weekend and the utility box unlocked, she saw her chance to fix the problem herself. She marched down her driveway, gardening gloves on, and brandished her pruning shears like a weapon of justice. Muttering under her breath about unapproved infrastructure, she knelt beside the box, yanked it open, and stared at the bundle of cables inside. One thick orange line ran toward the police station just a few blocks away. "Ugly thing," she grumbled. "Probably some internet junk for those noisy tech people." With one determined snip, the shears sliced through the fiber line. A faint spark flickered, then silence. Karen smiled with satisfaction, brushing off her hands as if she'd just trimmed a hedge. She had no idea that in that moment, every dispatch call, security feed, and emergency communication link at the Crestwood Police Department went dead. A few blocks away, inside the station, Officer Dan Marshall stared at the screen as the lights across the server rack began to blink out one by one. The hum of computers faded into an eerie stillness. He frowned, leaned forward, and muttered, "That's not a normal outage." He didn't know it yet, but someone in his own neighborhood had just severed the police station's digital lifeline. Inside the Crestwood police station, the atmosphere shifted from routine calm to sudden confusion. Phones rang without connection, radios hissed with static, and the blue glow of computer monitors flickered before dying out completely. Officers exchanged puzzled glances, unsure whether it was a power issue or something worse. The dispatcher tried rebooting the system, but nothing responded. Within minutes, the entire communication grid of the department had gone dark. Officer Dan Marshall leaned back from his workstation, frowning as the status lights on the server rack blinked red, one after another. Before joining the force, Dan had worked as a network technician for the city, so he recognized what he was seeing. It wasn't just an outage, the fiber backbone had been cut. The realization hit him fast and hard. The police station's network didn't just serve their computers, it ran dispatch lines, security cameras, emergency response channels, even the digital key system. Without it, they were blind and disconnected from the rest of the city. Within minutes, the chief called Dan into his office. "Find the problem," he said firmly. "Now." Dan grabbed his equipment bag and jumped into his cruiser. Following the network map on his tablet, he traced the source of the outage to a junction point just 2 streets away in Crestwood Estates. When he arrived, the scene was almost comically absurd. The junction box stood open, cables exposed and sliced clean through. And standing next to it, proudly holding a pair of garden shears, was Karen Whitfield herself, the HOA president. She didn't look guilty. In fact, she looked triumphant. "Ma'am," Dan started carefully, "please tell me you didn't touch these cables." Karen raised her chin with authority. "Of course I did. They were ruining the neighborhood's appearance. I've told your contractors 3 times to move this mess." Dan stared in disbelief. "You just cut through the fiber line that connects our police station to the city network." Karen blinked, unbothered. "Well, maybe next time you people will listen to the HOA's concerns." He couldn't believe her calm arrogance. This wasn't a simple property dispute, it was sabotage of a municipal system. As Dan radioed for backup on his emergency handheld, he knew this wasn't something the HOA could smooth over with a fine. This was about to become much bigger than Karen could ever imagine. Dan knew time was against him. The longer the police station stayed offline, the more vulnerable their operations became. Every minute mattered. 911 calls were being rerouted through neighboring towns, cameras around the precinct were blind, and even the digital evidence storage system had gone dark. Karen stood nearby, arms crossed, muttering about ugly boxes while Dan ignored her completely and focused on his tablet. He wasn't about to waste time arguing with someone who didn't understand the gravity of what she'd done. He crouched beside the severed fiber, assessing the damage. The cut was clean and precise thanks to Karen's heavy-duty shears, but that also meant there was no quick fix. Splicing a line like this would take hours and specialized tools. He needed an alternative. That's when an idea sparked in his mind, one that reached back to his years before the badge. Before joining law enforcement, Dan had worked with a cybersecurity contractor that managed a classified federal communications backup system. It was designed for emergencies exactly like this, local infrastructure failure. He still had credentials from his time there, not for misuse but as a liaison between local and federal systems during crises. He dialed an old contact at the Federal Communications Support Center and quickly explained the situation. "Your HOA lady really did a number, huh?" the voice on the other end joked. Dan managed a tight smile. "You have no idea. Can you reroute the city station through the federal relay temporarily?" There was a pause, a few clicks of a keyboard, and then, "Give me 4 minutes." Dan watched as data began to flicker back to life on his handheld. The signal jumped from red to green. The connection was rerouted successfully through a secure federal backbone. Dispatch lines reopened, surveillance cameras rebooted, and the police station's network came back online. Relief flooded through him. The crisis was over, technically. But as he turned back toward Karen, his relief shifted to disbelief. She was still scolding him about unauthorized installations and violations of neighborhood standards. Dan simply stared, speechless. She had no idea what she'd just caused or that her little act of defiance had now tripped federal monitoring systems. Somewhere in Washington, a red flag had been raised. This wasn't just a neighborhood incident anymore. It had just become a matter of national interest. By sunset, the once quiet streets of Crestwood Estates no longer felt so peaceful. Neighbors peeked from behind their curtains as 2 unmarked black SUVs rolled slowly down the lane, their tinted windows reflecting the evening light. The vehicles stopped directly in front of Karen Whitfield's house. Moments later, 2 agents stepped out, both dressed in dark suits, calm and professional, but their presence radiated authority. The HOA president, who had spent years intimidating her neighbors over mailbox heights and trash can placement, suddenly found herself the center of attention for all the wrong reasons. Karen opened her front door, clearly annoyed. "If this is about the landscaping again, I've already filed a complaint," she began, crossing her arms. The taller agent held up his badge. "Ma'am, we're with the Department of Homeland Security, Cyber Infrastructure Division. We need to ask you a few questions about an incident that occurred earlier today involving a fiber optic line." Her confidence faltered for the first time. "Fiber what?" "Oh, you mean that ugly orange wire?" "Yes, I took care of that. It was ruining the whole street's aesthetic." The agents exchanged a look. The shorter one opened a folder. "Ma'am, that line was part of the municipal communications network, specifically, the one that connects the Crestwood Police Department to federal databases. By cutting it, you disabled law enforcement communications for several minutes. That's classified as interference with government infrastructure." Karen's smugness drained away, replaced by confusion and growing panic. "That's ridiculous. I'm the HOA president. I was protecting community standards." From across the street, Officer Dan Marshall watched as the agents spoke calmly but firmly.